One of the things that I see in a change coming, we get detail on this later, but deductibles are going up and more people are going to be cashing out. There's going to be more direct to consumer interaction. All of those things become solutions to make my business better, but chaos reigns when I start doing that because now I got 20, 30 different application software programs, platforms that I'm trying to stuff into this package of my business. So it's confusing, it's hard, but at the same time, they're all solving a problem. I'm advising them to start taking a look at commercial verticals and saying, okay, instead of just going and doing marketing to agents or adjusters, let's open it up to cities, municipalities, property management companies, HOAs. Take a look at healthcare as a vertical, things like hospitality. So take a look at different verticals and dedicate resources in order to try to have a more broad source of work. Very, very fundamental parts of my business. Knowing what my numbers are, knowing what my scoreboard tells me, knowing quantifiably what's happening in my business. So if I've got all of those things in alignment, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. I have to be making a bottom line return on this investment. And my advice to any restoration company is
welcome to the conversation. We were scheduled to do this in Orlando at our
yeah,
capture event, but to be honest, that turned out to be a somewhat packed and already
yeah,
very energetic setup. So thanks
yeah,
for
no, I
taking the
get
time
that.
today.
I get that. Doing something live is always nice. And well, this is live, but doing something where we're in the same room is good. But this is fantastic. Works great.
Where do I find you today?
I am in Oregon, Beaverton, Oregon, over on the tech
Okay.
side of Portland.
I just spoke with a colleague from Oregon. So you're expecting some snow, I
Uh,
learned.
yeah, gonna be some freezing rain, snow, just kind of a mess. It just sounds like a mess. So, and where are you?
I'm in Montreal. We
Okay.
are at minus 20 Celsius right now
Yeah.
and are expecting a, snowstorm for
Uh,
tomorrow.
that's
So,
lovely. Let's go back to Florida.
yeah, let's go back to Florida. But I mean, it's part of the topic in a way. Kind of extreme weather events, they are influencing our industry. So that is something that kind of keeps everyone busy,
Oh yeah.
conversationally, but also work-wise. To kick it off, why don't you give us a kind of quick background about who is Phil Rosebrook,
Okay.
and what brought you to where you are today?
My story goes back a long time, but it's a really simple story. My father bought a restoration company when I was a senior in high school. So my first restoration project was spring break of my senior year of high school, and I spent 10 years working in the industry. So in those 10 years, I filled every seat in a restoration company except for the bookkeeper and mold remediation because back in the late 80s, early 90s, we called that demolition. So it was just a different kind of a different world. Uh, at the end of those 10 years, my father sold the business and he went out on what I call the restoration road trip and drove from Oregon to Michigan and back with this belief that restorers needed someone to talk to who'd been in their shoes. So he got back. He was right. Started Business Mentors in the fall of 1997. I meantime moved to Colorado. Worked with at the time one of the bigger players in the industry uh, for about 6 months in Colorado, and helped them open up an office in northern Colorado in Fort Collins. And at the end of that, I was ready to come back home. And my father talked to me and said, "Hey, let's do this together. Let's be business partners." So for about 22 years, he and I were business partners. And I was a business consultant starting out, kind of a 27-year-old kid, flying around the country, helping restorers create a new department in their company, or start a marketing program, or solve problems and help them move through that process. Uh, so at this point, it's more strategic, but I'm doing the same thing. Been a consultant to disaster restoration companies for the last 27 years. Worked in hundreds of restoration companies, helped them kind of create organization and structure to their business, and kind of transform their company, create this vision of where they wanted to go, and then help them walk through the process. So my restoration journey is about 37 years long, and I think I'm starting to get it figured out a little bit.
Yeah, sounds like it. Wow, that's impressive. So, I mean, I'm coming from the Verisk Elevate conference in Salt Lake City last week, and I thought one observation I made there, and I'm really curious, what's your view on this? Is okay. You really in the restoration industry, you have it all kind of like funneled and concentrated towards the top, if you so will, towards the carriers. But then the more you go downstream, if you so will, the closer you get to the job site, to the actual loss, kind of the more diverse the businesses are. And also, I feel the more diverse the kind of like operations and systems are. So that sounds like you have plenty of experience in that domain. I mean, will that stay like this forever? Do you see change there? Maybe you can bring us a little bit on your journey over the past 27, 37 years of what you observed there.
In some ways, I see it as this pendulum kind of swings back and forth, but I do see some kind of foundational shifts taking place right now. And so I'm gonna see if I got your question right. You're talking about our clients' needs from sophistication, or our operations in a restoration company and the sophistication in systems and structure, and how we facilitate those.
I mean, we are a software company, right? So I'm looking at it from the lens of a software company. And if I go up, I see, okay, you have Exactimate and you have CoreLogic, and somehow they translate to the carriers. But then if you talk about the adjuster, if you talk about the restorer, if you talk about the people in the field, I mean, there is just so many more different solutions. And it's not that like not everyone is using a system, but some are not, and everyone is kind of like having and applying different approaches to about how they go, yeah, how they go about their business there.
Yeah, so from a let's say a contractor standpoint, there's a lot of things coming at us. So the first thing, when we come and look at the insurance companies, they say, okay, we need certain programs and certain solutions. We need Xactimate. We need to have some sort of a communication platform. We got a place to keep your notes. We got to have, and now they start bolting on different needs for. We want imaging. We want photos. We want some level of communication. So contractors were always running after those types of solutions. Now every time I turn around, there's a new solution that a contractor can look at and say, okay, what do I need? How am I going to solve my needs? And so, saying it was driven from the top down, if I'm going to be an insurance restoration contractor, I have to pay attention to what those insurance companies want and need. And so, if I if I'm going to do an estimate for them, I'm either going to use Symbility or Exactimate, or a formalized time and material to schedule price list. But now let's move a little step further, a step back. Uh, there's more people that are catering direct to commercial clients. One of the things that I see in a change coming, we get detail on this later, but deductibles are going up, and more people are going to be cashing out. There's going to be more direct to consumer interaction. I suspect that in some states you're going to have $20,000 and $30,000 deductibles, and if you've got that, now all of a sudden my average claim is no longer the $9,000 claim that it used to be. For an insurance claim, it's $30,000 or $40,000, and on the other end of it, I need to be more transactional. And so I have to have things that are customer facing. I have to look at financing. I have to look at how do I give the customer what they need, and then sell and have a transaction that builds value to them, when they don't want to see 37 lines on an Exactimate sheet to tell me how I'm going to fix their water damage in their basement. They really want to know, is it going to cost me $4,000 or $5,000, and when's it going to be dry? And so I have to start changing some of those things. So from a contractor standpoint, I'm looking and saying, okay, I've got insurance needs, I got my needs, I got customers' needs. And every time I turn around, there's a new solution making it easier, better, different for me. And as a contractor, I'm trying to weed through and sort through this stuff and see how it makes sense. So it's become more complex. There's becoming more need from a contractor standpoint to start embracing new technologies, partly because they're solving problems for me, but partly because they're making it easier um, to communicate with my clients. So if I'm going to do commercial property management companies, and they've got $1 million deductible from this large management company, well, or 100,000, whatever it is, they're not going to want to look at the same things an insurance company does. They want it pretty streamlined, pretty straightforward. They want to know what the bill is, and they're going to be heavy time materials. Same level of documentation, though. And then the other thing I've got, if you think about it, for any contractor, I maybe have 20, 30, 40 jobs running all over a city. And I need to make sense how do I keep track of those? And so as people throw new technologies at me, maybe it's Kahi with tracking my equipment, or I've got one of the cellular companies putting a GPS system in my trucks. All of those things become solutions to make my business better, but chaos reigns when I start doing that, because now I got 20, 30 different application software programs, platforms that I'm trying to stuff into this package of my business. So it's confusing, it's hard, uh, but at the same time, they're all solving a problem, and they're unique solutions to unique problems that are in disparate jobs everywhere. And so as contractors, I'm trying to sort through this stuff and make sense of it. And so instead of just trying to restore a building, I'm trying to look and find 17 software solutions that solve all of my different clients' competing needs and their demands and expectations and everything that they're measuring and monitoring me on. So it's a complex answer. I'd like it to make it real simple and straight, but it's not.
Yeah.
It's getting in the way of doing the business that we do.
Well, that is a kind of hypothesis to work on.
Mm. Yeah.
Um, but you basically touched on one, I think, major industry shift is
Yeah.
okay, deductibles are rising and it's more direct to consumer. Maybe tell us a little bit more about this. What do you see there?
Well, so first of all, I think it's an evolving trend. It's not that way in every state, but we'll talk about the causes for this. So, insurance companies are looking and say, okay, I've got California or the hurricanes through the Carolinas last year and Florida. They've got these massive bits of exposure, and they look and say, okay, I can handle a normal stream of work coming through, and we can predict that. We have the impacts are I have inflation now, and an insurance company is tough to predict. It messes up their business model because they're charging me a premium today to fix a job tomorrow. And they have a tough time trying to figure out what's that premium supposed to be? How do I overcome that? So that's one impact is inflation. Then we have unknown interest rates. They're in some ways interest rates are good for insurance companies because they're investing their premiums in fixed dollar commodities. So it's good for them. But at the same time, then they throw in all this risk from catastrophe events. $1 billion events are now the norm. And so all these things are coming at an insurance company, and they're saying, okay, if I can remove some of my cost, so it's my administrative costs, it's my claim costs, it's whatever, by increasing the deductibles for these insureds, then that's going to make a lot of sense. And so you're seeing states like Texas, California, Florida, and then if you the heavy hail states, which there's $1 billion events in the hail states, Colorado, Oklahoma, Nebraska. I was surprised at this one, North Dakota, South Dakota, big events. And so those those states are coming and say, okay, we're either going to not insure a roof for a full replacement, or we're going to depreciate it, or you have to have a new roof in order for us to insure you. So that's one way they're taking care of it. The other thing they're doing is saying, okay, we're going to make you responsible for a lot of this loss as well. And so we're going to put your deductible at 1%, 2%, 3% of your policy, and then put the fear. All these people have fear that, oh gosh, my premiums keep going up. If I file a claim, it's going to go up even more. How do I manage all this? And so that's what's happening with the insurance companies, and that's why I believe that there will be a more of a direct to consumer for your small everyday losses. You also may find solutions, such as Homey, that's coming in and saying, okay, we're going to take a different approach to claims coverage on these everyday claims. And so companies like that are maybe transforming the market a little bit. But the way I can see, at least for the next year or so, 2 years, watch those deductibles going up, new, more complex insurance solutions, uh, things that, maybe have two, three, four insurance companies on the same loss, or the tenants have a greater share of the insureds on a building or a policy than they normally would. So that's why I believe that there'll be more of a shift to consumers and you'll find more cash outs. You find more people that need financing for what would have been an average claimed water damage or small smoke damage, mold remediation, whatever it is.
Okay. And I mean, acknowledging these shifts in the industry, I mean, how do you advise your restoration clients? What are they supposed to do to prepare themselves for it?
The first one I look at is where you're marketing, where you're spending your time. So the first thing, it's always been a belief of mine that restorers should have no more than about 10% of their work coming from a single work source. And so if those work sources start changing, we're going to diversify and say we need to have multiple people sending us lots of claims every single day. So if one goes away, then it doesn't really harm our business. We also, I'm advising them to start taking a look at commercial verticals and saying, okay, instead of just going and doing marketing to agents or adjusters, let's open it up to cities, municipalities, property management companies, HOAs. Take a look at healthcare as a vertical, education, uh, things like hospitality. So take a look at different verticals and dedicate resources in order to try to have a more broad source of work, but then also be very deliberate and say, okay, what is my business going to look like? What kind of work do I want coming in? Is it going to be mitigation, reconstruction? Do I want, where do I want that to be coming from? Who's going to be paying my bills? What are their terms? And so you start looking strategically and saying, what's going to be the best place for my business? And so one of the things I'm telling you is, first thing, take a look at those verticals, look at commercial. One of the things that we can go, commercial, I'm concerned a little bit about the viability of some management companies in some large cities. I just think that they've got a lot of risk because they have a lot of debt that's coming due and they have to refinance it at much higher interest rates than they had before. Their occupancy is down substantially. So if that's one of the verticals you choose, you have to be cautious in trying to figure out, are they going to be able to pay you on the other side of it? So, so look at the verticals, all those things. Look at where you're marketing, where that work comes from. It doesn't have to be a covered claim if it's going through a lot of those areas. It just has to be a claim. Service providers, plumbers, HVAC companies, things like that that are encountering losses before anything's ever turned into a claim, if it is going to be turned into a claim. So all of those things are relevant. And then one of the things that I'm advising people to look into is some sort of a financing mechanism. If we're going to be working with people and they all of a sudden have an uncertain $20,000 loss they didn't know they were going to have yesterday, where's the money coming from? Do we make it easy to do business with us? Can we give them some resources that, hey, we'll come and take care of the work, and here is a bank that will do a no interest 6 month financing, sort of like Home Depot does, or some of these other vendors, and take a look at how we're funding the jobs and work that we're doing if it's not coming from an insurance company. Because we don't want to sit there with doing all this work and sending a $20,000 bill and then sitting and waiting for somebody to pay us if they choose
Yeah.
to.
Yeah, I mean, this is one and the other. I mean, you said look at other verticals, but be deliberate, deliberate about what you want to do. I mean, that I have a kind of instant reaction of this. That sounds really broad for a typical kind of SMB restoration company. I
Yeah,
mean,
yeah.
you somehow gotta focus on what you want to do. No.
Yeah, you do. So it is broad. That's why I wouldn't advise you to go take on 17 verticals. I find one and make that your home. Become relevant there in that one or two verticals where you can start exploiting that, being relevant. And so what you can do is shift some of your mechanisms. Maybe we're paying 4% to a TPA that gives us 4% that we can put into marketing funds. If we figure out what it is, then we can apply those resources to, I'm not going to say exploit it, but to take advantage of those opportunities in that vertical. And so realizing, you have to look at your marketplace and say, what is your marketplace? Where are the best opportunities for each company? And then think about what it is you want to do, and then create a plan starting with, here is what it's going to look like. Here's our goal in a year. If this is our goal, how are we going to get there? How many calls do we have to make? Who do we have to talk to? What is the ramp up time? What is the frequency of loss that they would have? What are the damages looking like? And then knowing that they all have different needs. It's so if we're going to say, okay, there's lots of hotels here because I'm in Las Vegas, or wherever I am. I'm in a town where you have a lot of transient people in and out. Uh, they want backs on beds. That's when they don't necessarily want the cleanest, the cleanest, most pristine environment. They just want to get that room back rented out again. And so my strategy is going to align with that. Speed is important. Turns on jobs is important. If it's an apartment complex, I'm gonna have to wait 90 days to get my money, and they don't want to pay a lot of money. But I could make that my vertical is something I want to look at. Healthcare is a great one to look at. So you've got more and more nursing homes popping up all over the place. They have lots of plumbing in all of these nursing homes, whether it's toilets and sinks or kitchens and whatever else. So that's a good vertical to go and exploit. But what I'm going to do when I exploit it is I'm going to have to dedicate people and resources and money and advertising and trade shows that are going to align with that. And that's why I don't want to do all of these different things all at once. I'm going to find something that works really well and then figure out how to become a recognized name or brand within that vertical.
Okay, good. So you made a controversial hypothesis for a software CEO. So all the new products are keeping you from what you're supposed to do.
Yeah.
Explain.
Okay. So it's very confusing. I've got a client right now. When I first started with them, in order to open up and start a job, he has his job being entered into 12 different programs before he ever gets started. And so there's a challenge in there. It's like, okay, so as I've come back to him, only work with him for a couple of months, but what are the ones we really need? How can we get programs that talk together, that communicate and synergistically work, and create opportunities instead of just taking away? There's no billable time in there, and it's supposedly covered in my 10 and 10, my 10% overhead. So I'm adding all these software programs in, and it's confusing. So you've got different functions, different purposes. And if I'm in a franchise or I'm working, as I mentioned before, if I'm working for a TPA or some insurance company, they've all got their needs. And so I'm sitting here as a contractor with my needs too. And so do I need a CRM? Do I need to have something that does my dimensioning and sketching? Do I need something that I can enter in all my job data and then I've got my psychrometry built in there? Uh, all of these things kind of sit in there. And so as a contractor, I'm looking and saying, okay, I've got 20 different alternatives to do some different components of my job. Some of them do all of them. Some of them do some of them. Some of them talk with others. Some of them exist all by themselves. And that's confusing for a contractor who knows contracting. And now I've got somebody that you understand software, but if you got to go get your car worked on, you may not understand that so well. And so that's what keeps them up at night, is because it's not clear for you. It's easy to see, here's all my options and here's what works really well and here's what doesn't. But for the contractor who knows all about painting and framing and finished carpentry or mitigation, drying and mold remediation, software is not a core function of what we do.
So then, I mean, how do you advise? How do you go about this? Scrap everything and start from scratch? How do you judge on which of the 12 ones to use? What's
Yeah.
what's what's your what's your solutions here?
Scrap everything in pencil and notepad. Uh, so the reality is you got to look at outcomes and results. What is it that I'm trying to accomplish with the use of software? And I have three kind of simple rules that I look at for any software use. It should help me um, scale my organization without having to scale money every time or people. I can start doing bolt on and leveraging software to make those things better. It needs to reduce cycle time. How can I make my jobs faster, flow faster, get in and out quicker? And it also needs to have a component to it. So if I'm looking at those, I'm looking at strategic and saying, okay, cost component, meaning, so is it going to save me money? Is it going to make me money? Is it going to improve the profitability of my company? I'm going to leverage the people. I'm scaling my company, and I'm speeding jobs. So I got to start with a strategic awareness of what I'm trying to accomplish. And then if I look at those as outcomes, then I can look at what are the resources that can help me get to those outcomes. And then I'm going to have to do a strategic assessment and saying, what are the best resources that I have? Some of the considerations, whether I want to or not, if I'm a franchise, they're going to have requirements. I have to do what they tell me. If I'm on a TPA, I have to do what they require. So there's certain things that are built in that my hands are tied. I don't get a lot of choice on it. Everything else I have to be strategic about and say, okay, I need these results. I've got these options and opportunities, and I have these required inputs. Do I need to do more of the required, or need to not only use them for those required jobs? So I'm going to look at those kind of things, and then really what I explore is, how do you get the most out of the software that you have? Most people will use about 5% or 10. There's a stat you would know on what the percentage of the use is, but I think it's probably, I'd have to guess it's around 10% of the functionality of any software program. And so now we have 15 software programs that we use less than 10% of the capabilities of any of them. So be aware of what you have, learn it, become really good and adept at it. And then if it's solving those problems strategically, we looked at it, and financially, we don't have to have all of these other programs in here. Now all of a sudden it's starting to make financial and let's say strategic and operational sense to my business. And so look at the plan, look at what we're trying to accomplish, look at my options, look at my requirements, and then make a plan based on that. And then and then make sure you're using the software, getting the training, getting the resources, and effectively deploying that within my company.
Is there a way to kind of account for how much overhead or efficiencies you can gain versus how much you are kind of like risking to waste if you add on too many? Is that something that you analyzed in the past?
Well, I don't have a formula for that, because I'm not sure there is a good formula. It's going to come back to understand. So, very fundamental parts of my business: knowing what my numbers are, knowing what my scoreboard tells me, knowing quantifiably what's happening in my business. So, if I've got all of those things in alignment, it's going to make it a whole lot easier. And then I can start from a budgetary standpoint, and I'm just going to say, okay, my overhead is going to have to fit into a 28% of revenue package, or maybe it's 22, or maybe it's 32, somewhere in there. But if you're going to build and say, I have to be making a bottom line return on this investment, and my advice to any restoration company is it needs to be above 10%. And the reality is most restorers are making less than 10%. The reason it needs to be above 10% is this is a cash poor business. We pay our bills today, we get paid tomorrow. And so, being cash poor, we need to look at our budgetary constraints. And so it's gonna start with that big picture. Build it profit first. Take a look at my overhead needs to be. Look at I know what my gross margins are. I can make improvements there. But then that's going to give me more of let's say a strategic understanding of what I can spend and what my expectations are from a software program.